Everybody, this is Perch. I want to talk about a storytelling technique that isn't used as much these days, and I'm confused as to why. It was more common decades ago, and the way that comic books are written for the trade, so to speak, today. And I'm not, by the way, I'm not sure that's entirely true. I think that's a little bit of dated information. If you go back 5, 6 years ago, or 10 years ago, Bendis was popularizing while he was at Marvel this idea of writing for the trade, and you can't put all that on him. Lots of writers were doing it, editors were recommending it, but Bendis had that model down pretty on lock. With 6 issues, and you drop a trade, and another 6 issues drop trade. Like he was doing it pretty mechanical. And uh, so I'll tell you how I got there. But there's some contradiction in what I'm about to say, because despite the fact that writers still to a large extent write for the trade, and this has been going on for some time, this one tiny storytelling technique is not common, and I think it makes the whole thing work, particularly when you are writing for the trade. But anyway, here's what got me onto it. So I recently went back and reread The Boys, which I do typically whenever a season drops. About midway through the season, I start thinking to myself, like, I know they've mentioned this character before. I'm sure of it. So it must be in the series, it must be in the comics somewhere. So I go back and I look for this. The show does a good job of Easter eggs, of these little kind of obscure references to characters in the comics. So I'm like, I know it's in there. So I go back and I wind up reading the whole series during that period. And what I always notice, in addition to the story, which I like, I think it's a good series. I think it's well done. I think there's a lot of good stuff to it. Is the comic The Boys definitely has arcs? Fairly written for trade arcs. There's sections, and this is true of a lot of things, including manga. And by the way, I don't want to make this video about manga, but manga also does this technique. And I do wonder if this is another, benefit it has when it goes into things. But we're focusing on The Boys today. So the mission of The Boys is laid out pretty clearly in the first arc. The idea of Butcher is going to get Huey and the other characters in the kind of his ensemble, and they are going to go and they're going to keep the superheroes in check. And there's a bit of revenge in there, and they're not going to be necessarily polite about it. And the superheroes are running amok, and so they're the counteraction to that. And you get the feeling in this thing that from the first arc that it's all leading to a big confrontation with the biggest superhero, this team, the Seven, and that there's definitely personal bad blood between Butcher and Homelander, and that's where it's all headed. It's headed to that location at some point in the future. But what you notice in the comic as it goes into Arc 2 and Arc 3, when it hits the different everything from their trip to Russia to kind of delving into some of the flashbacks in the past, to just all the things as it's leading up to the conclusion that they highlighted or signaled at the beginning, which was Butcher was going to go against Homelander. How in the world is he going to be able to compete nose to nose with this guy? Is Homelander going to snap and just destroy what all is going on there? And that's where the series is headed. That's the ultimate conclusion that's going to take place. But it takes a long time to get there. Many, many issues and many, many arcs. And what happens is a little bit like the old TV shows, like X-Files would do. So if you remember the X-Files, there was this bigger plot of Mulder and his sister, and are there really aliens, and was she abducted, and Scully is skeptical of all this, and they lay this out, and there's all this conspiracy. There's the smoking man, or the cancer man, whatever, and then you had the different government agencies, and are they working against it? And then you had the black tar goo that would go on in people's eyes, and so you had like these bigger mythology pieces, but they would lay it out for you, and then they would move into Monster of the Week episodes for 5, 6 episodes. It would just go by. There'd be some random thing. They never lost track of the big arc. And when you got into these Monster of the Week episodes, ones that are standalone, don't really have anything else, they would drop just enough as if people were coming to the show for the very first time, that it's like, oh, Mulder, you're always thinking about these, that there's aliens, but there's no proof that there's aliens. Oh, yes, there is, Scully. And they'd have this little argument. It would take like 30 seconds, a minute. And if you watched all the shows over and over, you got to the point like, why are they still arguing about this? Like they've argued about this a million times. But if you were new to that show, if you hadn't seen it before, you got the point of the big overarching story right out the gate. They would give you this context, and they move into the Monster of the Week episode, and then you have a couple of those, and then when you got to the kind of the bigger, continuity, for lack of a better word, plots, it would move the whole thing forward. The Boys does this as well, as it has these arcs. Almost every arc feels a little bit like a reset. Almost every arc has, Butcher and Huey and Mother's Milk and Frenchie, and the woman sitting around like an office or an apartment or something. They're sitting around somewhere, and they're like, yeah, these superheroes are bastards. Yeah, they sure, Homelander's up to some shit. And they would talk about, something, and then Butcher would and we're going to Russia because something's going on over there. And you'd get that, you would basically just get this recap of what's going on in the series, and you'd remind the readers, hey, there's this bigger thing we're building to up in the future, that's going to be a big confrontation. We're going to get Homelander, and here's why we exist, and everything else. You'd get that context, and then you'd slip into what seems like a completely unrelated adventure, but it would give us a chance to, do something else with the setting, get some other heroes or villains into the mix, learn more about Butcher's past, whatever it is. And it built the tension, but it didn't feel like it was killing time. The trick was they were reminding you that this big story was out there. And the other trick was, if you heard good buzz about the Boys, if you thought, hey, this comic really has something going on, I don't know what it is, but I should start picking it up, you could pick up the current issue on the stands. And chances are, within 2 or 3 issues, you were getting the story. They would do things in arcs. So if you were issue 4 or 5 in the arc, you were well into the action. But it would be very easy, trivial, to just go back a couple issues and start from the beginning of an arc and feel like you were getting caught up on the story, you understood the mission, and all the rest. It's writing for trade, but it's making sure that you're creating a lot of entry points. And comics talks about it jumping on points all the time, but the jumping on point when Marvel or DC talks about it is usually it's a number 1 issue. Hey, we rebooted the series for you. We restarted it. We restarted it as a number 1, so it's perfect jumping on point. Or, hey, there's a new arc. Carol Danvers is going into space. But if you start with the first page of that arc, it doesn't catch you up on the series. It doesn't do any of that stuff. Look at the new Spider-Man. That thing is incomprehensible if you're new to Spider-Man. Now, Spider-Man, everybody knows Spider-Man, but still, it's, 6 months later, Peter's life is shitty. What's going on? There's a mystery to uncover. But what it doesn't do is go through hey, here's this giant thing we're building to, or here's the story thus far. And when I say story thus far, no, they don't need to recap that Uncle Ben got shot at some point, but they maybe want to recap I'm Spider-Man, I try hard and sometimes I fail. Gwen Stacy's neck got snapped, and then I was dating Mary Jane, and then the world got fuzzy for a while, and I think I may have been married, but I'm not sure, and my ultimate goal here is to what? In The Boys, the ultimate goal is to keep the superheroes in check and get some revenge. To settle some scores. That is the thing they're building to. They're building to this confrontation, but that's the goal. In a lot of manga series, like I said, I'm not going to make this about manga, but what is the goal of My Hero Academia? For Midoriya to be a hero, and there's these villains out here that are threatening to topple the world. We got to stop them. Demon Slayer. Hey, my sister here's been turned into a demon. There must be a way to cure her. I'm on a quest to find that, and to do so, I may have to go, confront the master demon, the major character here. There's always a point. In Spy X Family, it's, hey, I've got a mission here, and I had to construct this family to do it. I'm starting to have feelings for them, and at some point, you get the feeling like, hey, the other side may hire it may hire the wife as an assassin to go up against a spy, and they may be, put in each other's crosshairs, and then what will happen? You know that's what it's building to. So now, if you turn around and you say, all right, the X-Men, Batman, Spider-Man, the new issue of Spider-Man just launched. What are they building to? And this storytelling technique of every arc kind of recapping what's going on and pushing the characters forward toward that conclusion, why don't they do that anymore? If you look at the old Avengers, if you look at the old X-Men, if you look at the old Teen Titans, there was this storytelling technique of arcs. And at the beginning of the arc, there would be a little bit of a, hey, this person may be a brand new reader, so let's kind of remind them of, like, let's give them the main thrust of what's going on and remind them of the destination point. Here's where we're trying to go. You know, with the X-Men, it's like, hey, the world's getting more and more dangerous for mutants. We're trying to gain acceptance. And Magneto's up there causing some shit over there. And so we need to figure out how to make our way in this world. With the Avengers, it's hey, we were formed to take on these threats. The Masters of Evil are out there doing some shit. We better go take care of it. There's this kind of reminding of what's going on, like The Boys does, like comics do today. What's the Avengers? What are they pushing toward? Jason Aaron has identified this kind of vague idea of Mephisto is out there and he's manipulating the Avengers, but for what point? Why? What's he going for? I thought over in Spider-Man, the issue was that Peter's daughter is going to screw with him at some point, so he's got to take care of that. But he's also got to screw around with the Avengers. But again, but why? Oh, we got the multi-universal Masters of Evil out doing stuff, but why? What's their plan? What's the goal? That's the kind of stuff where is there, it's not just, it's what's the destination point? How do we keep reminding the reader that destination point is out there and coming? And then, tap into that and then use that as a way to continually encourage people. I made those, I reminded you of the X-Files and some of these shows because they did a real good job of saying, we know not everybody's going to come in on episode 1. People are going to come in somewhere in the middle. So we need to find a good welcoming place to bring them on. And it can't just be, hey, we've got a new arc. Start buying now. And this is this for all intents and purposes is what Marvel does today. It's a jumping on point because it's a new arc. Well, for a reader, who cares? What does that even mean? What does that have to do with anything? Okay, it's a new arc. So super. I think that there's some easy techniques you can use here that make the storytelling easier, help bring people along. And again, I think The Boys, Garth Ennis and what he did there is an excellent example of this. I think it's done very, very well, and it holds up. And my puzzlement is just, why did we stop? What happened? Anyway, maybe I'm crazy or making too big a deal out of it. Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.